Some of you have met Douglas, and you've read about him obviously on the website. He is a blogger, social media guru extraordinaire, gardener. You know, he wears lots of hats and enjoys it and does it well. I admire the way he can juggle all of his interests and parlay them into smart cash. So he is going to talk on a year of self-preservation. Take it away, Dan.
Thank you so much, Edward. As Jennifer said, my name is Douglas E Welch. You can find out more about me and everything that I do, which includes all the blogs and everything that Jennifer mentioned, at douglasewelch.com. Which, by the way, if you don't have a URL that you can give people like that, get one. Okay, it is important. Because you need to tell people what you do and how well you do it. Now, I've talked on a lot of different topics here at To the New Transitioners over the years. Several of them have been a year of. This is something I started about 4 or 5 years ago. I was sitting around and I was writing my career column, my weekly career column that I write, and I was like, well, I feel like I need a theme for the year. I feel like I need kind of something to sum up the year. And I came up with a year of visibility, because I was talking about how you need to be visible in your job, in your career, in the workplace, in the world. And so it kind of came off from that. So I've done visibility. 1 year I did leadership. Another one was a year of action, about taking action in your career and in your life. This year, it's sort of grown organically out of some other work I've done. I wrote a short book that's available in the Amazon Kindle store called Social Media Self-Preservation. And I think Jennifer and I talked about this a little bit as I was writing this. Because I, as a computer consultant and a social media consultant, I deal with people who are very, very put off by social media. They're scared of it. They're afraid they're going to go down Alice's rabbit hole into Facebook and never be seen again. And the term that kept coming to my mind was self-preservation. You have to engage in social media on your terms. You have to think about your own self-preservation. Well, over the 1.5, 2 years since I wrote that book, that term has just come out of my mouth over and over and over. I talk to so many friends, with friends, family, other groups, in my columns, whatever. The term self-preservation keeps rising up, because I'm seeing a lot of people these days who are feeling overwhelmed, not just with social media, but also with their entire life. And they can be overwhelmed for a variety of reasons. I've had several situations this year where it's a caregiver situation. And as we all know, being a caregiver for someone is very, very difficult. And it can be very, very overwhelming. And the caregiver can sometimes get just as ill as the person they're trying to care for. Well, that's obviously not what's supposed to happen. Basically, it's because they didn't think about their self-preservation, preserving their own energy. And it's not just about, it's about protecting your health, first of all, because without our health, having had a health scare back in October, if you don't have your health, you don't have anything. It colors everything in your life. But it's also about protecting your income. It's about protecting your attitude and your mental well-being. And this is the piece that gets forgotten a lot. We all talk, and we have a job. We might talk about taking a mental health day, which basically means I'm calling in sick today. But that's not that far away from the truth. Sometimes you need those breaks in your stressful lives to reconsider, to just relax, to get away from the stressors for even a short period of time can be very helpful to you. The funny thing I find about self-preservation too is, regardless of the relative or perceived success of the person, self-preservation still comes into play. You can be someone who is out of work, who's struggling to find a job, and be worried about self-preservation. But you'll also hear the kind of sad stories of oh, I'm rich, but I'm not very happy. Well, that's a dangerous situation to find yourself in too, and it just shows how self-preservation underlies everyone, regardless of where they are in their lives, what level of success they might be at. It affects us all because it's a human condition. It's not related to our job, our career. It's related to us being a human animal. And sometimes we ignore these parts of us that are very animalistic. The old term the scientists used to throw around was the lizard brain. That little piece deep down in our brain that triggers fight or flight reflex. When we're confronted with a threat, what do? Do we fight or do we run? And that was, in our earlier incarnations as human beings, that was very important to us. That decided who survived, who died. So the trouble is, in today's world where the threats to us are simply less, we can still trigger that same fight or flight without really needing to or meaning to. And it can leave us in some bad situations. Often what it leads us to is feeling very, very stressed all the time and actually wearing ourselves out from the inside out. There are several warning signs when you're not thinking about self-preservation. One of the first ones is your focus becomes relentlessly external. You're always about, well, what are they thinking? What are they doing? What can they do for me? What's the weather going to do to me today? Everything you're thinking is all external. It's all out there. Instead, you need to turn that inwards. Other warning signs, if you find yourself saying, I have to do this. If you find yourself saying, I have to do this a lot, stop and think about that, because I'm going to show you why that's not really a good place to be. You're also hearing yourself say a lot, I must do this. Or you're having external people say, you must do this all the time. Not a good situation. Another one I hear oftentimes, well, they'll be angry if I don't do this. Okay? Someone else, again, external forces trying to control us. But they're my brother, my mother, my father, my sister, my cousin, so on and so on and so forth, my boyfriend, my girlfriend. I hate this, but I have to do it. When I hear the hate word, that sets off alarm bells in me. Because you've gone from the simply, well, I'm sort of begrudgingly doing this to, I am doing something I really do not want to do. And that is never a great place to be. I have another book I wrote called A Career Compass, which is about finding what you want to do in your life. And one whole quadrant of that compass is stuff that you hate to do and never, ever want to do in your life. And it's important to know those things. This makes me feel bad, but I have to do it anyway. If you find yourself saying these phrases, if you find that a majority of your decisions are coming from phrases like this, whether internally or from your close friends or family or whatever, these are warning signs. These are warning signs that you're not thinking about preserving yourself, about self-preservation. What I try to help people do when I meet someone, I talk with someone, I do some career consulting as well, is when I find someone who's really got a lot of these phrases, and oftentimes I'll hear one person say all of these, just because they're so common in the way we state what's going on in our heads. The first thing I go to them and say, okay, you say you have to do this. How do both of you benefit from this action? Because the fact is, if you don't both benefit, there's something wrong. If you're always giving and never taking, you're in a danger zone. You're in a situation where you're being used up. So one of those first questions is, what's the win-win? I know it's cliche, you hear it a lot in business books and everything else, but there is that term, what's the win-win? Everybody has to win. And there's also another phrase which I really like, which is, everybody wins or we go home. No one loses. Because if you have a winner and a loser, we all know in our lives, when you're a loser, you feel really lousy, and you're probably not going to do what needs to be done. And if you're a winner, you may be really high, but then you're like, well, then I have all these, now, and we talk about making enemies before we started today, then you start making all these enemies behind you. You need to look for that win-win. For yourself, as well as for the person you're dealing with. If you're constantly giving that win to somebody else, you're going to find yourself in trouble. The next question is to say, is this something I need to do for myself more than even the other person? If I really need to do this, yes, this might be a lot of work, this might be kind of stressful, but it's going to help them and I really need to do it for myself. Think about those. This is a tough one, but you need to allow yourself to do something, even if you feel it might hurt the feelings of someone else, even though if you feel it might make someone else angry. If you have carefully thought through it and decided that it's important to you, guess what? It is important to you. And you have to discount a bit what other people may feel or think. You can't control that. They're going to feel or think what they want to think. But if you really think it's something you have to do for yourself, guess what? You probably do. Okay? And the last one in this section is so important because I see it happen every day. If you're in a toxic situation of any sort, okay, whether it's bullying, abuse, substance abuse, whatever, you must remove yourself from the situation. The very, very heart of self-preservation is distancing yourself from those things which affect your self-preservation. If you are constantly dealing with a family member who's addicted to drugs, you will suffer. Whether you think you are or not, you are suffering as well. And I don't know the Narcotics Anonymous or Alcoholics Anonymous terminology for that, but there are support groups for the members of the family of the person who is having a substance abuse problem, and that is why. Because we like to think, oh, this doesn't affect me. That's just that person's issue and what. No. As any of you know who've had any sort of toxic environment like that, it affects you sometimes even more than it affects the person. Because the person is tied up in their whole own world of the addiction. You're the one who's clear-headed enough to understand what's going on and not be able to affect it. So I can't reinforce that enough, is if you find yourself in a toxic environment, I don't care if it's family, friends, whatever, you've got to distance yourself from it. That may not mean cutting off entirely from the person or anything, but you have to realize, you have to recognize the situation and go, here's my line. I call it going down the rabbit hole. I used that term earlier. Alice in Wonderland, she follows a white rabbit down the rabbit hole into Wonderland. And there are so many situations in our lives where we can go down the rabbit hole if we're not careful, if we're not thinking most particularly about ourselves. Okay? We can sometimes ignore what we want most in life, what we think is best in life. We let the current carry us away sometimes. So I really want to tell you that one of the biggest things you can do for yourself, whether you're, how do we say it for career camp, employed, underemployed, or unemployed, okay, because some of us are underemployed as well. There are things that you can do to take action to, again, focus on self-preservation. Make sense to everybody? By the way, if you have any questions, please shout them out and we'll follow up on this. I may say, I'm going to get to that in a second, but if you have something, please let me know. I'm not sure if it's television or movies or whatever, but we sort of have, at least in America. I write a column which is actually read around the world, so sometimes I have to say, in America, this is the way it is. In our media, people tend to be presented as selfish. If you think about the television shows you watch, and I'm not talking necessarily about Survivor or anything like that, but if you just watch a sitcom, the characters in those shows are often shown to be very, very selfish. And we often come to the belief that everyone is very, very selfish. Well, no, the fact is, if we look around us to our own friends and family, we see people who are not selfish. We see people who are selfless in many, many ways in their lives, including ourselves. But the media cliche is the selfishness factor. And you've got to watch out for that, because you can begin to think that everyone is actually that way. And if you begin to think that everyone is selfish, naturally, you're going to treat them that way. And the trouble is, if you treat everyone that way, how do you think they're going to treat you? You're going to reinforce the stereotype further, and they're going to treat you exactly the same way. As if the only thing you're out for is yourself. The only thing you're out for is doing what benefits you most and benefits them least. Bad cycle, okay? Because we're not treating each other the way we actually are. We're treating each other based on something that's cliche. And we talk about racism and sexism and anti-gay bias and bullying and everything else, but we often do these things to ourselves. Again, it's part of the human condition. Cliches actually serve us well in some cases. It gives us a grand general rubric, is that thing going to eat me or not? Okay? In today's more subtle world, it doesn't serve us as well as it once did. So we really have to watch out for those times when we are making assumptions about someone else and allowing them to make assumptions about us in ways that really doesn't fit anymore. Okay? So I want you to really think about your dealings as you go about the rest of your day today. and see how many times you actually someone being really, really, actually, clinically, dictionary definition selfish. You know, I know, yes, I run into some people like that every once in a while, but it is not the norm. In most places, you walk up to the door at the Starbucks, someone will hold the door open for you. Someone will, they greet you nicely at the counter. We have to have that level of interaction with people, otherwise society could not function. We would simply tear ourselves apart. Yes?
I will jump in with an observation that is an in-America thing. I have a lot of friends from other countries. They've immigrated here or they're in the process of. I hear feedback, this is an American thing, this friendliness. You don't see it in other countries. And so it's interesting that how that can relate to what you were saying, that it's portrayed in American television, that Americans might be selfish, but in actuality what I'm hearing is that Americans are perceived by the rest of the world as being friendly, outgoing, warm, giving.
Sorry. I hate to just contradict.
No, that's good. Go ahead.
No, I think that's kind of I think that's just sort of the way people look at themselves, because you hear stories about, you ask Americans who are the friendliest people are, they'll say Canadians,
Our friendly neighbors to the north.
They may or may not think of themselves that way. I heard this story about somebody was like going across country and they were saying how that, never mind, it's irrelevant.
Well, no, I have a similar experience. We have family in Sicily. My wife's family is in Sicily. Basically cousins that we've reconnected with over the last 10 years, 12 years or so. And Italians get a bit of a pushy stereotype about them. And yes, there are pushy Italians. I have to change my mindset when I go there. Culturally, I have to think like an Italian, because there are certain things like waiting in line they don't do very well. And that's just a cultural thing. But I also find people there who are just the friendliest people you would ever meet. It would be kind of the antithesis of what you would think. And so it's, again, very, very important, though. Cliches are cliches for a reason. There's a little grain of truth in there. What we have to do is not apply that grain of truth as the whole, as the majority.
Well, you said that about the Italians. And I remember my situations when I would have been up north in Canada. And as you were saying, I think that they're very nice people. Nonetheless, I had a situation as a child where we had a breakdown going to the south from the north, and we stayed at somebody's gas station all night, and they comforted us and fed us and provided for our needs. And you never would have thought that back in, at that time, I was about maybe 5 years old, that this would have been the case. So I take it to this point, whereas your upbringing does a lot to dictate on how much selfishness you got away with. Therefore, if you were able to get away with more because of your situation, you carry that on into adulthood as a way of life.
It would get into the whole nature versus nurture, in which I think there's both. We have a nature, there are certain things we're born with, but we also have certain things we are taught. There's a song in the South Pacific, you have to be carefully taught. You have to be taught to hate and fear. You have to be taught from year to year. These are the lyrics from the thing. And it is true, there is a lot of that can be applied. And you bring up a great example of this in that we have to treat people as individuals. Okay? Yes, you might be part of this cliche grander group, the American South, the Canadians, the Italians, whatever. But it's very important for you, when you're faced with an individual, to treat them as such. We talked about interviewers before we get started today. You have to kind of deal with that interview as an individual, not as a corporate suit, not as a tech guy, not as a human resources rep. The best thing you can do, and I've read this in tons of other places as well, is make a connection with them. Do they have pets? Do they like horses? Do they, what do you have in common with that person? That will allow you to interact with the person as an individual. And again, if you interact with someone as an individual, it will serve as self-preservation because they will treat you in a similar way. Okay? And if they don't, then there's some other issue there that isn't under your control, and you just have to go, okay, that's not under my control. I've done what I needed to do. Self-preservation is a lot about that. I've done what I've needed to do to to do the best in this situation. Regardless of what, I often tell my son, I say, just because someone else advocates their responsibility does not give you the right to advocate yours. The whole argument of, well, such and such does it, don't care. That's not a gimme, that's not a freebie. You still have responsibilities that you're supposed to live up to. And so you need to think about that yourself. You have self-preservation responsibilities that you need to keep up with.
Now, what you just told your son is something that he'll always be able to carry away with him because you didn't allow him to gravitate towards, I'm just like everybody else, I'm going to do whatever people do. I'm going to push it off on someone else. Now, when he gets to be an adult and he realizes his responsibilities, he's going to think back that my dad teach me that these were my responsibilities.
And that's one of the things that, I perhaps came to that later in life even. When it finally clicked with me that my responsibilities are my responsibilities regardless of what's going on around me, that for me was very empowering and very important in the rest of my life. Because, honestly what it does, once it do, it gets rid of a lot of excuses. You don't have the excuse anymore. You don't have the gimme. You don't get the mulligan, as they say on the golf carts. You don't get to try over. So once I came to that, and that's something I wanted to pass on to my son, actually, and that's the way I came up with of saying it to people, was based on what I said to him. Yeah, they can screw up. That's fine. That's not you. You can't do that. You have a responsibility to yourself to do these better things. Something that happens to kind of around that is you can't live someone else's life, and nor can they live yours. We are all burdened with living our own life. If we give up our life, metaphorically, to live someone else's life, you're going to be a doctor. How many people have we heard about being sent to law school or medical school or whatever that never wanted to be there? And you know what? They'll make lousy doctors and they'll make lousy lawyers because they don't want to be there. But yet they have given up their life to the wishes of someone else. Typically, there's no attempt to barter. They simply give in, or if there is an attempt to barter, it's simply refused. That person, though, has mentally and with clear decision decided to give up their life. Okay, that's a very harsh thing to do to yourself. Okay, and you need to, again, be aware of that. Don't give up your life for someone else. They can't live your life. There's no way they can do that, and neither can you live theirs. We all have to live our own lives. Don't give up one of the most important pieces of your life, which is your work, your career, and everything that revolves around it. Okay? But I'm sure you've seen it all in your own lives. People who have given up their lives to live someone else's life. The life that was dictated to them, the life that was required of them, whatever.
In some cultures, it's very, to this moment, it's very much an influence. Who you'll marry, what you'll do for a profession.
I was going to say, it's almost like the level of being, arranged marriages. It's not a marriage, but you have an arranged career. They have said, and here is your career, but you've never met, but you're going to do this now. Family businesses are notorious for this. You run a greenhouse, you run a flower shop. Guess what? Every kid is going into the business, whether they want to or not. It's unfair to them. It's unfair to the parents who are perhaps pushing them into that. They don't see it that way. They don't realize, I'm trying to perpetuate my business and I keep family history and all this. I was like, yeah, but what damage are you doing along the way?
Dr. Buss, the owner of the LA Lakers, passed away, and guess who's taking over? His daughter.
Now, if she likes it,
Yeah.
if she likes it and she's good at it, that's one thing.
Correct.
The trouble is she'll have a lot of burden that she'll have to carry, though, because it'll be seen as nepotism, whether it is or not. So she'll have to actually be better than someone new coming into the job, which is another lot of pressure. I mean, that one you've got to go into eyes wide open and say, okay, I know what I'm going to face going into this, because it's going to be tough. Any situation where you succeed someone is very, very difficult. Following a sibling into the same teacher's classroom 2 years later, it can be a problem, okay? Oh, your sister was so much better at this. Oh, your sister was a hellion and I disliked her so much.
Just tell the teacher they have a bad memory.
Yeah,
You don't remember
there
it
it is, there it is.
accurately.
So I want to point out the people you want to look for in your life. We kind of talked about people you want to avoid, situations you want to avoid. The best people you want look for in your life are those that realize you are doing what's best for you, even if it might inconvenience them. They'll begrudgingly say, oh, like, I'm going through this right now. I'm in transition. Oh my gosh. Maybe I should come to the group more often. I'm transitioning out of my day-to-day computer work into more new media consulting, more what I call above-the-desk work, rather than crawling around plugging in cables. All of my clients who I've let know about this are immediately, oh my God, you can't leave me, I need you, what am I going to do without you? But all of them are also very much like, I understand why you have to do this. I mean, those are the people you're looking for. It's the people who say, no, I need you to do this and you cannot stop doing it because I need you to do this, that you really have to watch out for. Because those are people who are going to try and tie you into something that perhaps isn't in your best interest.
They're being selfish.
They're being selfish, exactly. Yes, sir.
You were an IT person. I was in IT for 17 years. Got burnt out.
Very easy.
Easy to do.
But the good thing was, at the same time as it was going to a slow fizzle or flame dwindling, it got to the point where I was picking up different skills that I didn't know that I had. They were there, dormant, ready to be released. And like you were saying, in regards to your son, in regards to people who are in positions, probably 90% of our workforce is not in what they really like to do.
We are still living. I just turned 49 last week, and I am actually a baby boomer. Official definition 1964 is the last year of the baby boom. I do not self-identify with the baby boom generation at all, but I grew up in Ohio, rural Ohio in the 70s, which means I had a 1950s upbringing. Okay? Because it takes a while for stuff to get into the middle of the country. I had the quintessential 1950s upbringing.
Lucky.
What it means is I have to force myself to think differently. I have to really, really concentrate. I can feel trying to back here, it's kind of like, oh, no, okay, Doug, you might as well just stand up and say, hey, you kids, get off my lawn. Because that's what's happening. I'm falling into that because I'm right. I still have all that baby boomer experience of growing up. I purposely push myself to find new skills, to be around younger people, to be around people who are excited with their work. Oh, we're going to get to this at the end here. People who are excited with their work rather than people who are depressed about their work. And there's a whole section coming up on that. The rules of self-preservation. Here are my rules. I should bring those stone tablets with me. I don't know if are there 10 of them? I don't think there are 10 of them, so I'm obviously a slacker.
Come up with Ken.
I got to look at first and foremost, you are worth preserving. We have lots of issues in this country and in the world today with self-worth. It's okay to push yourself. It's okay to feel you might be lacking in this or that. It is not okay to beat yourself over the head constantly about a weakness that you might have. Look to your strengths, because there you will find the reason why you are worth preserving. And I know it sounds silly, but I'm sure we've all met people who have lost their self-worth. They don't think anything they do is worthwhile. They don't think anything they can do is worthwhile. They've basically given up. So I want you all to understand, no one in this room is unworthy of self-preservation. Okay? Because frankly, just making the step into this room and coming to this meeting, you're already a step above 99% of the people.
I was going to say, it's what Jennifer has attracted and created, but I think just to back up what you're saying, yeah, anybody who makes it here is already feeling dynamic and wanting more.
There's a phrase, 10%, 90% is just showing up. Okay? Guess what? Ding, 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 ding. You're now part of the 10% because you showed up. I tell people at career camp and all of that. You've already made the first step. You're already head and shoulders above the group of people who did not come, who perhaps even signed up and didn't come. When we forget that we're worth preserving, that we're worthy of self-preservation, we can let others take advantage of us. Okay, let's heap burden upon burden. Let's not feel worthy and let's let other people take advantage of us. No, you got to be careful with that. Do not let people take advantage of you. You can and do deserve better. And I'm not saying this like an entitlement. Well, I'm entitled to be president because I'm a white male of age 49 years old or whatever, you know. No, I'm talking about the fact that as individual human beings, we all deserve basic human rights. Well, guess what? Sometimes we deny that to ourselves. It's so odd to see when it happens, and I must admit, I'm a human. I have my days, okay? I can get pretty low down sometimes. But we're all worth preserving, okay? We talked a little bit about selfishness, and I've had some people, when I talked about this topic, come back and say, well, you're just saying you should be more selfish in your life. And it's like, no. Because selfishness, well, you can only be, in my belief, you can only be effective in your life when you are in a stable position from which to help others. If you are firmly standing on the bank of the river and reaching out a hand to someone who is floating down the river, that's the position you want to be in. If you're floating down the river with the person, there's not a lot you can do. You're not in a position. You don't have a stable place to stand in order to help them. And so your goal is always to be in a stable position. That's the point where you can volunteer your time to charity, donate your money to charity, help your family, help your friends. That's where you need to stand. If you're not there, guess what's going to happen? They're going to drag you down with them. And you're going to, it's mutual, I shouldn't even say they're going to drag you down. You're going to drag each other down. Because neither one of you has a place to stand. Don't be in the situation. Constantly be looking for that area where you can firmly plant your foot on the ground and say, okay, my monthly income is sort of worked out now. I got a decent job. Okay, now I can reach a hand out. That, to me, is not selfishness. That is simply self-preservation. It's, you can't do anything for others if you yourself are in dire straits. Okay? So, once you establish a certain level of stability, then you're in a much better position to reach out and help others. Yes?
May I make a contribution here?
Please.
We all hear it when we get on board an airplane and the flight attendants give us the instructions in case of an emergency, the mask will come down. Don't put it on your child first. Put it on you, then you can take care of the child.
Right. Because if you pass out, there's no one to put it on the child.
Yeah.
So, very, very good analogy. I hadn't even thought of that analogy, but that's perfect. Oftentimes, though, we don't think from that.
Nobody needs to be strong.
We don't think from those attitudes. You know, we allow our thinking to cloud. We all do. Every person, we're humans. I keep going back to that. It's the whole thing about being a human animal. We like to distance ourselves. We're not animals. What do you mean? I'm not an animal. Yes, you are. We're all, in fact, you're a mammal, okay? So, look at all the other mammals in the world and how they behave. You have some of that within you. And there are certain things that are good, and there are certain things that are bad about our behaviors that make it more difficult for us. I won't say good and bad as a value judgment, but things that make it easier for us to live our lives and things that make it more difficult to live our lives. Okay? Sacrificing yourself does no good for others. It may look good in a movie. It may look good in an epic story from ancient Babylonia, Gilgamesh. You know, to sacrifice yourself. You know, they'll take my freedom. They may take my, what is it? They may take my life, but they'll never take my freedom from Braveheart. Okay, yes, but you have to realize that as an average human being, not Braveheart, that sacrificing yourself for others is not as noble as it might like to be portrayed in the movies and the
There's no future in that.
There's no future in that, exactly. No one, kind of tying back around to what I said earlier, no one should be asking you to give up your life for theirs. And I don't mean that in actual, my life is threatened by a gunman or a knife or whatever. But no one should be asking you to live their life or the life they think you should be living. Okay? That's a clear sign that their thinking is a little clouded. They're not thinking from a win-win situation. They're not thinking from a self-preservation situation. So it's a good little kind of red flag. You hear phrases like that or people like that. And you're like, okay, wait a minute. Okay, there's a little red flag waggling over in the corner that you need to be aware of. And go, okay, I see that. And then you must react appropriately. There are times in your lives when you must, and I have it in capital letters, must do for yourself what needs to be done. And I think that's the hardest thing I see people struggling with, is they know what they need to do, but they're being told that they can't do it, or that they shouldn't do it, or that the family decrees they can't do it, or whatever. And as all of you know, the stress involved in a situation like that is unbelievable. It's going to cause fractures in you, it's going to cause fractures in your relationship, it's going to cause fractures in your family. Best that they are dealt with rather than simply let them crack apart. Okay? So there will be times when you need to stand up in that. I'm trying to think how I say this in the comment. I often say when I'm talking about careers, no one can care about your career as much as you do. They can't. It's physically impossible. It's mentally impossible for another human to care as much about your career as you do. Okay? So once you realize that, you go, okay, so I can get a recruiter, I can get, work source, I can get this, and they will help you, but they will never care as much about your career as you do. Okay? And once you realize that, you go, okay, now I got a better idea where these people are coming from. Because guess what? They're worried about their own careers. They're worried about their own lives. Again, just the human condition. That's just the way we're put together. But people ignore that fact all the time. Why don't you get me a job? Why haven't you got me a job yet? You say to your recruiter. And the recruiter's like, I'm working on it. But they can only do so much. Because if they do too much, they might lose their job. So be aware of that. Try to put yourself in the other person's head at least a little bit and say, what interviews we were talking about earlier, what if I was on the other side of the table? What would I want to ask me? What would I want to hear from me on the other side of the table? Anyone in an interview, they'll tell you what they want to hear is, how are you going to reduce my pain? Okay? How are you going to take work off my plate? How are you going to do something that I don't have to constantly monitor you every day? You just go off and you do the work and you come back and it's done and it's done right. That's what they want to hear. I can make your life easier. Okay? And if you can't tell them that, you got issues. Because that's what they want to hear the most. Is how can you improve my life and my work? So be aware of that. Put yourself in that other person's head. And remember, there are just certain truisms about human beings. That this is just the way we're built. And we can ignore it all we want. It's still going to bite you. You can ignore the rain outside all you want. It's still going to get you wet. Okay? You can say, I don't believe in the law of gravity. It's still going to take its toll if you jump off a building. Okay? There's certain things you can't get around, no matter how much you might want to ignore them.
And in terms of recruiters, which is why there's very few I ever bother to work with, particularly if they're free as well. It's about their client. It's not about you. Their job is they get paid by filling that position. So even though it may seem like they want to work with you, what they're trying to do is fit you into whatever mold that client needs to get that job done, or to interview well so they can get that commission. So really, you're working for yourself if you are dealing with a recruiter, having that mindset of, okay, this is what I want, this is what I want to deal with, and if we can work together, it's more of a partnership than it is, you get me a job, you help me.
There's a business term I use all the time, conflict of interest. Okay.
That's it.
Lots of people have conflicts of interest, and you need to be aware of them. And a recruiter is one of those. They have a conflict of interest, and then you're not their client. Okay. The person, the business that they're hiring for is the client, and so they're going to lean on that side. And if you know that going in, then what your job then is to help them sell you. You need to rewrite your resume, rewrite your resume. You need to build this skill up, build that skill up. I mean, they're telling you those things not because they think you're personally lacking as a human being. They're saying, I need that skill to sell you as a person. Okay? You've got to have mud flaps and fog lights in order for me to sell you to this customer. So go get the mud flaps and fog lights on your car. Okay? That type of thing. But it can be a conflict of interest sometimes. You really have to watch out for this, because often the worst situations you can get into is where there is a conflict that you don't know about. And so be aware of that. We talked earlier about people who want the best for you even though they know it might inconvenience them. And the antithesis of that situation is one that I found myself in a couple times, which it utterly amazes me when it happens. You're working for a company, you find a new job, you tell your boss, okay, I'm resigning. They get angry at you. They get angry at you. Oh my God, I can't believe you're so disloyal. Blah, blah. Turn off your hearing. It's not about you at all. All they're thinking is, oh, this is going to make my life so much more difficult. Okay? I'm going to have to hire someone, I'm going to interview people, I'm going to have to take over their job while this is going on. It's not about you at all. And a good boss will actually be happy for you. They will be one of those people that is like, yeah, I understand. Dang, I'm really going to hate to see you go, but okay, I understand why you have to go.
Or they'll say, what's it going to take to keep you here? Is it too late?
Mhm,
What if I give you a couple of extra zeros on the end of your paycheck?
And I've actually written about counteroffers in the past. The trouble with the counteroffer is it's too late.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
I would caution you to, there are very few situations where you should accept a counteroffer, because if you're already unhappy in the job while you're leaving,
Extra zeros aren't going to make you any more happy.
exactly, and you're going to feel a little bit trapped.
It's a bit of an appeasement.
Yeah, you're going to feel a little bit trapped, and so that's a great example because that's common these days. Unfortunately, if you think people are doing good work, you should give them a raise anyway. You shouldn't make them, and this happened in several companies I worked for, you shouldn't have to threaten to quit in order to get a raise. That's a bad situation, and it shows some lack of management skills in the company. And again, red flag. I picture these little flags that like pop out behind things. So but that's how I could be watching a situation take place, and it's just like over their head. Ding, a red flag pops up. Yep, see that? Okay, now I know where I stand. You can apply that same thing. When you see those situations, recognize that that's what's happening. Recognize those red flags because they are, in most cases, very, very obvious. But don't let someone like that guilt you into staying in a position or make you feel bad for doing what, in this case, is something you have to do for yourself. Okay? Again, I would caution you, you will have to think about this change. You will really think deeply about what this change is going to mean for you. But if you have done your due diligence, then do it. Because it is what's in your best interest. Okay?
I have something I want to
Yes.
say to that. I got an email today from a previous employer. As a matter of fact, the previous employer. They're over here just west of where we are now. And I was working on the east of the 405 with the same employer. And I was saying to myself, do I really want to go work for them again? I was ready to leave them even before the disclosure of the site being closed down anyway. Do I really want to go work for them again? Now, preservation being what it is, and the hours, 3 to 11, okay, I'm not doing much between them hours anyway. It leaves me all morning time to be still working, pulling an income, but do I really want to go work for them? Deep within me, the answer is no.
And I would say if that's what's coming from here, there's a reason, the gut is, well, I call it, call it the gut, call it your gut instinct, I call it intuition. Every time I've ignored my intuition, oh, I'm not paid for it. Okay? I've gone into situations and go, this doesn't seem quite right, or I don't know if this is right for me. And there's always that little, doubt in the back of your mind, and sure enough, do I really want to work for this person? No. But I should have known that right. I should have acknowledged my intuition. I was obviously seeing red flags. Perhaps I wasn't acknowledging because perhaps I was feeling a little desperate. Okay. In your case, you have to look at that previous one. Has anything changed at the company since you left?
Well, the thing is, it's a different location. Don't know all the details of the job particularly, so that may be something which may be a plus, particularly with those 3 to 11 hours. We may have a different set of rules, because the biggest problem that I had is they look at numbers instead of making numbers count. I'm talking to you as a customer, and I'm trying to get you to get to a point where we can get you modified for your loan. It may take me an hour or so for you, particularly on certain skill levels of these different individuals, before they get all of that. Now, if you're already up to par and you can get the documents, get them faxed in, we're good to go in 20, 30 minutes of conversation versus an hour. But the thing is, I won't have to deal with you as long because I won't be going along 3 or 4 months waiting for this loan to get modified. it can be done in 45 days.
We have a big problem in America, butt in the chair time over achievements,
Actual
over work
productive
done.
work, yes.
Which is, I think, one of the major reasons you're seeing people working from home, whether it's within a corporate environment working from home or from a home office or working for themselves, is the amount of work you get done outside of the office environment is often tremendously more. And some companies are starting to see that. Some are still dragging their feet because all they see is, I can't see you, how to know you're working.
Right.
I'm watching you.
Even though you're sitting there playing solitaire and
And again,
surfing the internet.
I must say, that's something from my generation. If I put myself in the baby boomers, that's a very baby boomer attitude. And it's only through attrition that those attitudes will die off. Because people will simply stop working, and you'll have more people in management positions who have come up with this newer thought of, get the work done. I don't care where or how you do it. Just ease my pain. Just get the work done, and I will be so happy with you. You can work from Tahiti, for God's sakes. I don't really care. Just ease my pain. To kind of wrap up, I want to talk about one of the most important and one of the most dangerous aspects about living this life and living this crazy thing we call a career. There is this malevolent force that exists out there. I'm not going to get all dramatic about it. There is a whirlpool in the middle of any room that can slowly suck everyone down. Okay? And I have seen it happen in this very room, no matter how much we have tried to stop it sometimes. Again, because it's part of the human condition. And that is, if you want to grow your life and grow your career, you must avoid negativity. Okay? The negativity whirlpool, the negativity spiral, because it is a cumulative effect, and that's what I've seen happen in this group and other groups. One person starts down the path, they reach out and grab the next person, that person starts down the whirlpool, the next person, until the whole room is just this mire of negativity. That's not what this group is about. This group is about helping you realize what you have to offer, and what you have to offer to the world, to your family, to your friends, not about diving, my term, down the rabbit hole again into negativity. But I'm sure we've all seen it. And we all have seen, uplifting events can be very community-oriented too. They can, we can get drug along with the big football game or the big success or whatever, and rise up to that. But even then, there are kind of limits to how high we can go. There are no limits to how deep into depression you can go. That is why it's so important to avoid it, because it can drag you down. I have a somewhat pessimistical outlook on life, just naturally. That's part of my little, there's a switch up here somewhere that the pessimism slider is a little more towards pessimism than optimism, okay? And we're all built a little different.
It's a practical way to be.
That's just the way I'm built. So for you can imagine, for me, I really need to avoid negativity, because I'm already on the edge of the whirlpool, okay? I don't need to tip off. I don't need much to tip me off. And so what I do is I look outside and I look for those things that are worth holding on to. The job offer from the previous company, the interview I'm going to go on, the friend's interview is going to be being held right now. You have to find those things that aren't necessarily positive, but that are action-oriented. Because I find that when you are taking action, you simply cannot be negative. Because action, for me, is one of the most invigorating emotions that I can feel. I'll call it an emotion. When you quit a job, you never feel better than right after you quit a job you hate. Because guess what? You're taking action. Now you've taken the control that you felt was over your life, and you're taking it back. It might be scary. You might be worried about how you're going to make rent. But the fact is, because you took that action, you feel good. And I believe that's the case in all aspects of our life. When you're taking action, you're always moving forward, you're always progressing. It may dead end, that's not the point. The point is you're taking action. The more actions you take, the more results you will get, the more good results you will get, so on and so on and so forth. There's this great study that was done. They took, I think it's in, what book is it? I think it's in The War of Art, which is a great book if you haven't read that. It's about procrastination. procrastination and fear of creating, basically. They did a study. They took an art class, divided it in half. It's a pottery class. And they said, okay, this half of the class, your job is to produce the perfect pot. You have this semester to do whatever you need to do to produce the one perfect pot. Okay? Took the other half of the class and said, your job is to produce as much pottery as you can possibly produce in this semester. Okay? We're not going to look at quality, I want quantity. I want to know, just produce as much as you can produce. At the end of the semester, they got the classes back together, they brought their pottery, and they started to look at it qualitatively. Who had made the better pots? It wasn't the people trying to make the one perfect pot. It was these people over here, because in producing all the pots they produced, every single pot meant they learned a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, and a little bit more, because we all learn from our mistakes, or at least we should. And what they found is that incremental improvement, focusing on the quantity, the quality will come out of that. So your job is to focus on the quantity of your interactions in your life. The number of people you meet, the number of, simply, this comes back in the day when friends were still dating. In the dating world, people, I never meet anybody, and I don't know how I'm ever going to get married. Because you never go anywhere. You don't meet people, so therefore you're kind of precluding any sort of relationship occurring.
Law of averages.
Law of averages, exactly. And I was like, you don't have to go to a bar. You don't have to go to the club. Go to the Bible study meeting.
Go where you would go anyway.
Go to the coffee shop.
Go play bingo.
Go play bingo. Go hiking. There are a billion things that you can do that would increase your chances dramatically.
Go take a yoga class.
Yeah, or take a yoga class.
There's so many relationships happening at my studio now.
I think that's the physicality of it too. It's like you're just more open. You're just it's mentally freeing. It's physically freeing. I think it just makes you more open.
Usual strictures. You're just there.
Yeah. So think of that. Apply that dating world concept to your interactions in your career and your life. The more you expose yourself to, whether it's people, experiences, skills, education, whatever, the better off you'll be. It will never hurt you. That is one of the few things in life you can say where those interactions will never hurt you. Because, yes, you may meet a lousy person, but you know what? I got 100 more people to meet. Move on. I don't need to deal with you. When you have that type of situation where the amount of opportunities offered to you are so high, the ones that don't work out, they don't have that sting. They don't have that burn, I will call it, that happens. You spend the next week crying your eyes. It's like, nah, I understand. That's just the way you live. You're moving on. What a great place to find yourself. Other than at the bottom of the negativity whirlpool. moaning like the people across the river Styx in Greek mythology. Oh my God! Don't recognize when people are starting to be negative. Okay, and run the other way. That's about the only. That's the best way I can say it. Just run. Don't walk. Run the other way. You can attempt to help them to some extent. I mean, if you're feeling pretty good that day, you can try to turn the ship around a little bit. It's hard. Once it starts down the path, boy, it's hard to turn it. It really is, because it feeds on itself. So again, be aware of that. And if you feel you can't turn it, then again, as I said at the very beginning, remove yourself from the toxic situation. Maybe it was just that particular meeting. Maybe that was just that particular group of people. Maybe it was something weird going on in the world. Meteors falling out of the sky or something. Made people a little scared or whatever. But you have to adjust and actively engage in what the situation is and remove yourself if necessary. Kind of a side issue to that, of course, is drama. Drama has become the watchword of my days, and especially in online worlds, like Facebook and Twitter. There are some people out there that just love the drama, okay? They will do anything they can to cause drama in both their lives and the people around them. Julia Cameron, in her book, The Artist Way, called them crazy makers, and that's the term I've accepted. They are the people that call when you're 10 minutes away from your interview saying, my car broke down on the freeway. But it's not just once that they do it, because once you can say, okay, that's just life. And no, it's a person who always has that call. The person who is always late. The person who is always in a bad relationship. Always. Okay? And wants to weep and moan to you about it. At the worst possible time for you, when you've got stuff you need to get done. Okay? Identify the crazy makers in your life, wherever they may lie. They can be coworkers, they can be partners, they can be family, they can be friends. Once, when you identify them, you'll start to be able to notice their behaviors and be able to kind of deal with it that way. If it becomes too much, you will need to just say, don't call anymore, okay? Just stop picking up the phone, because their goal is they get some sort of benefit out of making your life crazy.
Misery loves company.
Yeah. They will take advantage of that. They will take advantage of that and of anyone that lets them get away with it. Okay? It takes some evaluation. You got to see what the situation is and stuff. But we all know. I mean, I know I have several crazy makers in my life, and it's just like, no, not gonna deal with it. I can't. I don't have the energy. I don't have the time. I don't have the mental fortitude to deal with that right now. But it's, again, one of those human conditions that's just out there. So, self-preservation. A year of self-preservation. I want you to concentrate on this for a year. I want you to think about how you can do better at preserving yourself, your work, your life, and becoming an even better person, job worker, creator, artist than you already are. Okay? You all deserve it. The tagline for my podcast and career column is helping to build the career you deserve. I believe everyone deserves a great career. They just need to find it. Okay? So please keep that in mind this year as you go about your searches and your travels and your job changes and your life changes and everything else. And remember that when things get a little hectic, maybe it's time for you to go in the corner with a nice cup of tea and just chill. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you.